In this video series, we're going to talk about the MemorialDESIGNER Mobile Workspace, which is built specifically for doing data death lettering out in the cemetery. First, what we'll do is we'll talk about the individual buttons briefly as to what they do, and then we'll go into more in-depth individual videos for the particular tools and how to use them more in depth. So the first thing is up here in the corner. We'll just go along this top bar here. So the first is to start a new document. We've already got one open. You can see Untitled one down here. But if we click on that button, it'll start a new document. By default, we've got a custom page size of 24 inches by 12 inches, so you're able to see the page border here. When you hover over the tabs, if you want to close it, you can click on the X and just say no, since we haven't made any changes there. You can also start a new document by clicking on this plus sign, and that will start a new document as well. The next one over is Open. If you click on it, it'll go to the Open dialog where you can open existing files. If you click on it and then click on Open, it will open it up. If you want to see a list of recently used documents, you can click the down arrow next to it and it'll give you a list of ones that you've recently had open. If you make changes and or want to save something for use later, you can make any change and then just click the Save button and it'll save over the top of your existing design. If you have a template or want to save as in order to not overwrite the original design, you can click Save As instead, and then you can give it a different name. Then just click Save. If you need to print this to your printer, you can click on Print. The next three are Cut, Copy, and Paste. In case you have text or objects that you need to move around, I can hit Control X, for instance, to cut this. And then if I needed to start a new document and paste it, Control V, or just click on these. If you highlight over the particular buttons, they'll give you the keyboard shortcut, so Control X to cut, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. The next one over is Undo. If you mess up and want to undo what you did, you can click on that. And you can keep clicking on it up to 150 times. If you need more undo levels than that, then you can actually go and change the settings, but by default there's 150 undo levels. If you need a redo, that's the next button over. The undo and redo also have drop downs so that you can see the different things that the different steps that it's doing there. The next one over is Import, in case you need to bring in a document from elsewhere. You can click on that and go and find photographs or other documents. Click on it, click the Import button, and wherever you click will become the upper left hand corner. If you want to, you can also, when you import, if you look at that, it tells you how big it is. So it's 6.827 inches wide by 3.87 inches tall. And it also says there that if you click and drag, it'll resize, or if you hit enter, it'll just center on the page. Or if you hit spacebar, it will put it at the original position if it's coming in from another file. So clicking and dragging will size it to however big you make that box. If you just hit enter, it'll put it in the middle of your page. And if you're bringing something in from another design and you hit spacebar, it's going to put it in the original position that it was saved at in that other file. If you need to share your files with someone else or another program, you can click the Export button, choose a file type, and then hit Export, and it'll send that file out as that file type. This next button over, Export PLT, exports an HPGL PLT file, which is meant for the cutter. So if we had our death date typed out, I'm going to show you actually this button here, which is invert selection. So let's just say I had a date here. I could invert the selection, hit delete on my keyboard, and it will get rid of everything that I don't want. So if this is all that I have, I can click the PLT button, and it will export this out as a PLT file. Whatever my file name is saved as, it will give it that same name, and it'll put it in the export folder. So if I go to the export folder, so it'll put the file in the export folder. If we go in there, we'll see that it's called newtemplate.plt. Another thing that the button does simultaneously is resize the page border. Right now I can't see the page border, but if I come over and click on this, it'll show me the page border. So it resized the page to fit my design. The reason for that is with the advanced plotting devices plotters, the plotter starts in this lower left-hand corner. So if we rotated this 90 degrees, and then hit PLT, it would automatically make it so that this is our starting position. The next one over is to switch views, toggle the view between enhanced and wireframe. It doesn't actually change anything, it's just changing your view mode. So you're going from being able to see all the fills and bitmaps and everything till not showing any fills and only seeing the outlines. Next we have delete all guidelines. To create a guideline, you click on a ruler and drag. So you click and drag, and then let go to drop it. Same thing from over here, click and drag, and then let go to drop it. If you end up with too many guidelines on your page, or you want to easily delete the guidelines that you do have, delete all guidelines gets rid of all of those guidelines at the same time. The next one over is Shape Builder. So if you needed to create a new stone and design a full stone, you can click Shape Builder, and that will let you choose your different shape to create. If you just needed to create a flat marker, for instance, not include the base, do a 24 by 12, click OK, it'll create that for you. Invert selection selects everything but what you currently have selected. Reverse facings, I'm going to open a design here that's already laid out. If you needed to change the sides that these panels are on, you can select everything, clicking and dragging, letting go, that'll select everything here. Reverse facings, so now Kathy's on the left and Ethan's on the right. If you only had one panel, or one design, and I'm just hitting delete on the keyboard to delete those. If I select all these pieces of the panel, I can hit mirror objects, and it will mirror from one side to the other side. Same thing for this, if I click on it and hit mirror, it will mirror it to the opposite side. Because this is a group, it mirrored both pieces. If I ungroup it, you'll see that there's actually two different pieces here that have been grouped together. But because it was a group, I didn't have to select multiple pieces. Where down here, these are all individual objects. That's why I had to select all of them first before mirroring. The next tool is perspective. If we import a picture, if it's skewed, you can add perspective, and that way you can change the perspective of your photo to straighten it out. The next one over is transparency. If you want to work over the top of a photo, you can make it transparent. Clicking on that gives you options up here as to what kind of transparency, or you can just click on this slider and drag it across. And that number there is how transparent it is, so that's 65% see-through. The next two are rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise and clockwise. So if we have some text typed out, you can click on that and it will rotate it. Click on it to rotate the other way. Next one over is to move to the front or the back of the layer. If we had something typed out and we imported an image, because we imported after we had typed that, if we click this, it's going to be in front of the text. So if we want it to be behind the text, we would simply move it to the back of the layer. Or we can click on the text and move it to the front of the layer. This next one is a toggle to see the page border. This is your page border based off of this size. If I click on that, it will disappear so we can't see the page border. The next is nudge. That's how much something moves whenever you click the up, down, left, or right arrows on your keyboard. So it's currently set to 1/4 of an inch. If I click on this date and hit the right arrow, it'll move by 1/4 of an inch. Control moves by half of the amount, so it'll be moving at 1/8 of an inch, and shift goes by twice the amount, so it will go 1/2 of an inch. If you want to change it, you simply change the number, hit enter, and it'll change that for you. The next is the options button to get into the settings in case you need to change any settings. Next to that is snap. Snapping to objects. It means that if you have two objects, you can start with a node or an edge, wherever you want to start, and drag, and as soon as it gets close to something else within a certain number of pixels, then it will snap, and it will also tell you what it is that you're snapping to. So if I wanted to snap this node to this node, I would just move it over there and snap it. If I had a guideline set, I could say snap to guidelines, click and drag, and it would snap to that guideline. The next is to show our text and panels and spacing dockers. If these over here disappear, if they're not there anymore, you can click and make sure that they're checked and they'll come back. This one tells you what version you're running. Right now we're at 1.375.5. This last button up here, these two arrows, if you click on those, it'll actually just show what the page size is. This is hidden, and the only reason that it's there is to make sure that this toolbar is set for a specific size if it were to be moved over at all. And then it gets rid of some of these buttons. So in order to fit on the screen the way that I want it to fit, I add that over here. So don't worry about that one there. That's just to make sure that the toolbars work correctly. And that's it for the top toolbar. This next bar down is called the property bar. It changes depending on the tool that you have selected. So right now we have the pick tool selected. So it's using the property bar for the pick tool. This shows us our page size, page orientation, default units, our nudge. We've also got the nudge up here so that in case you have something selected and it switches away from that, you can still see the nudge. This also has duplicate distance in case you want to make a duplicate. It's going to duplicate it in both the X and the Y direction by 0.25 inches. And this treats all objects as filled. What that does is, because this doesn't have a fill, if I click on the inside, it doesn't actually select it. In order to select it, I have to click right on the outline. If it had a fill, so if I clicked on it and came down here and double clicked on my fill and added a uniform fill color, now if I click here, it's not going to select here, but if I click back on this one, it will select it because it's filled. So treat objects as filled makes it so even if they're not filled, you can click and it will select that object. I don't prefer to work that way, so I have that unchecked. But this property bar will change depending on the tool that you're using. So if you switch to the shape tool, it will switch to being able to use shaping tools. Zoom will switch to zoom options. Text will switch to text options. So for all of the different tools, most of them anyway, not all of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but for many of the tools, the property bar will change depending on what tool you have selected. Over here on the left-hand side is our toolbox. The first tool is the pick tool. Also, if you want to know a little bit more about some of these tools, on the right-hand side are the dockers. If you click on the plus sign, there's the hints docker. And the hints docker will also explain to you a little bit about how the tools work. So I'm going to use this tool to select all these pieces and just hit delete on the keyboard to get rid of them. And I will also get rid of my guidelines so that we're back to having nothing on the screen here. The shape tool is if you want to edit a shape that's already been created, or if you want to manipulate text, you can use that. The zoom tool lets you zoom in and out, as well as zoom to the page and other things there. Text is what you click on in order to create text. Freehand lets you draw a curve or a line segment. This is for creating an ellipse or a circle. This is for creating a rectangle. In order to create a rectangle, you can click and drag. If you hold Control while you do that, it makes a square. If you hold Shift while you do that, it creates it from center. When you let go, then it creates your shape, and it will tell you up here how large it is. The next is Contour, which will create shapes either to the outside or to the inside of your current shape. Plot inscription, if we had text typed in, what plot inscription does is it will create a box around your design with a 3/4 inch gap, and then it'll create center lines and top and bottom lines for you as well. The all capitals button, if you are using a font that does not have, or that does have a lowercase version, for instance, the MLC fonts have lowercase versions that are the same as the uppercase, but they're smaller. So if you type those in and don't use Shift or cap locks in order to type those in, then they're going to be the smaller version. If I were to retype this with a capital D, you'll see the difference there. But if you typed it in and didn't notice ahead of time and don't want to go back and retype everything, you can click on this button and it will toggle to all capitals, converting it to all capitals as opposed to the upper and lower case. And it is a toggle, so you can just click on it to toggle it back and forth. The next is a frosted outline, which will create an outline around your text. Bold object will take whatever you've got and make it thicker. It converts it to curves in this process. Text spacing for width, if we have a date. You can use text spacing for width to set it to a specific width. Blastable lets you create a reference line. Let's say you wanted to make sure this portion of whatever you had was a set size. You can draw a line from here to here. Holding Shift, click on the piece that you want to change, and then hit Blastable, and it would go and make sure that that's 0.09 inches. Auto size lets you resize objects to real life sizes, specifically when you take photographs or bring in pictures from a camera. Those usually do not come in as a certain at a real size. You can see this is 3 inches for the overall size, where this template by itself is 4 inches tall, where the overall picture is 4 inches tall here. So what you can do is you can take a freehand line and just click there, move your mouse up and click again, and that creates a line for you. Then with the pick tool, you can shift select the picture behind it and run auto size and say, I know that that's 1 inch tall. You can straighten along that axis too, which in this case we don't want to do. And we can delete the reference line that we had. We'll hit apply, and it will resize it so that this is now 1 inch. And the next is quick distribute, which lets you do spacing between objects. So if you had 2 lines of text, for instance, and you wanted them to fit between or inside this box, what you could do is quick distribute, click on a top extent and a bottom extent, and it would put it then between those 2 clicks with even distribution between those clicks. So that's it for the tools on the left. Your rulers here on the top and the side show you where you're at. You can see where you're at on the ruler with that line there. If you click on an object, it will show you on that ruler where your object sits. So our center position is 3.5 inches this way. If you want to work with coordinates, you can set it to an exact size and hit enter, and it'll move that object then to that position. You can also change where your X, Y, your 0, 0 location is by clicking and dragging. Wherever you let go, that becomes your new 0, 0. If you double click on the rulers, then it will come up and give you the options for those rulers. Along the bottom, these are your pages. Most often with def dates, you're not going to do more than 1 page. But in case you needed to, you can create multiple pages down here. This gives you the tab showing the page that you're on. Down here in the corner is what's called the navigator. If you click, you'll see a little window of what's available, and you can click and drag around to see everything that's in your document. You can also get to that by holding N on the keyboard, or by clicking N on the keyboard. These are your scroll bars to scroll left and right and up and down. Just click and drag on those. Down here at the bottom, it gives you some hints on what things do, and then it also shows you what you have selected. You can change what it is that's showing if you want to. I prefer to have it hint. This is your fill color, and this is your outline color. And then this is for color-proof settings, which for our use, we don't use that. That's more for printing applications. Over here on the right-hand side, these are called dockers. The reason they're dockers is because they dock to the side of the screen. If you click on it, it'll pull it back out. You can undock a docker if you click and drag, so if you accidentally move them out of the way, then that's what happens. You can also undock dockers by themselves and they'll float. If I click and drag it back over here to the right hand side, you'll see a gray rectangle get created, and that means that's where it's going to snap to. If I did the same thing over on this side, you'll see how it creates that gray rectangle, showing that's where it would snap to. I prefer to have the dockers on the right hand side. I prefer to have all of my dockers together as opposed to stacked. You can actually stack them. So if I drug this docker down here, then it would be stacked. I prefer not to have my dockers that way though. So I'll make sure they're all together and then make it just as small as I can there. The docker tabs select the different Dockers. This X will close your Docker. For CorelDRAW Dockers, you can get back to them by clicking on this plus sign, and it gives you a list of different ones available. For the MemorialDESIGNER Dockers, you need to click up here and reselect them. You can rearrange by clicking and moving them up. But Dockers usually give you more tools to work with. A lot of this same stuff is also up on the property bar depending on what you have selected. So you'll see here that a lot of this information is also up here. But if you prefer to work with larger icons or inside a Docker, you can do that here as well. Up here along the top, it just shows you who you're signed in as. And then these are standard minimize and maximize and close. That is an overview of the MemorialDESIGNER Mobile Workspace.